Next important thing is about the selection or appointment of the Prime Minister. Now, Article 74, Clause 1 of the Indian Constitution states that there shall be a Council of Ministers with the Prime Minister at the head to aid and advise the President, who shall, in the exercise of his functions, act in accordance with such advice. Article 75 of the Indian Constitution indicates that there will be a Prime Minister of India who shall be appointed by the President. Prime Minister is the leader of the Cabinet Ministers. Main executive powers of the government are vested in the Prime Minister, while the President is the nominal head of the state. In the Constitution of India, there are no special provisions specified to choose a Prime Minister of India. But as stated in Article 75, the Prime Minister will be appointed by the President of India, and other ministers will also be appointed by him based on the advice of the Prime Minister. Ministers can enjoy their office till the wish and will of the President of India. Cabinet of Ministers will be collectively responsible to the Parliament of India. Now, the President can appoint anyone as Prime Minister whom he thinks in his best judgment would be acceptable to the House. This means that in case of absolute majority, the President follows the well-established practices and conventions and invites the leader of the majority party, front or alliance. But in case of no clear majority or coalition, President's role becomes very difficult. Now, in such a situation, the golden rule that the President follows is that he calls the leader of the single largest party or alliance having the support of more than half of the members of the Lok Sabha. And this is the way how the President makes his work easy and calls the Prime Minister to hold the office. Now, in the same thing, there has been a recommendation of the Constitution Commission in 2002 that the President can ask the House to elect its leader, who can then be appointed by the President as the Prime Minister. So, in very simple terms, we can explain this thing that the President of India appoints a person as the Prime Minister who is either the leader of the party which holds a majority of seats in the Lok Sabha, or is a person who is able to win the confidence of the Lok Sabha by gaining the support of other political parties. All other ministers are appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister. President can also appoint Prime Minister on his own discretion, but only when no party has a clear majority in the Lok Sabha. So, the Prime Minister is directly elected by the people. The person gets elected as the member of the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. The leader of the majority of votes in Lok Sabha is appointed as the Prime Minister. And finally, the President administers the oath to the Prime Minister after his or her appointment by the President. So, this is the procedure how the President, the Prime Minister of India is selected or appointed by the President of India, which has been very well explained in Article 75 of the Constitution. Now, once we have discussed how the Prime Minister of India is selected, next important thing to discuss about is the powers and functions of the Prime Minister of India. Now, the most important function of the Prime Minister of India is to form his Council of Ministers. Now, talking about the Constitution, so it is basically the duty of the President to appoint the Council of Ministers. But the Prime Minister is the one who, in a way, chooses his Council of Ministers, scrutinizes it, and then prepares a list that has then been approved by the President, and the Council of Ministers is being selected. Now, very specifically about the functions and powers of the Prime Minister. So, he is having the legislative as well as executive powers. So, first, the Prime Minister is the one who proposes the names of the members of his political party to President for appointment as ministers. The Prime Minister can suggest the President about appointment of the following other important functions. They are, first, the Comptroller and Auditor General of India, that is the CAG, Attorney General of India, Advocate General of India, Chairman and Member of UPSC, that is Union Public Service Commission, selection of election commissioners, members and chairman of Finance Commission, the Prime Minister is the one who decides the distribution of charge to various ministers and can reshuffle the cabinet also. He is the one who presides over the meetings of cabinet and can change the decisions taken therein. The Prime Minister is the one who suggests the President of India about the resignation or removal of any minister from his cabinet. He also controls and directs the functioning of ministers in the cabinet. The Prime Minister can resign any time and can suggest the President of India to dissolve the cabinet. He can suggest the President to dissolve Lok Sabha and to organize fresh elections. The Prime Minister is the leader of the lower house and can exercise following powers. They are: he decides the foreign policy of the country, that is one of the very essential functions. He is the Speaker of the central government. He is the leader of the ruling party in the Parliament. He is the Chairman of Niti Aayog, National Development Council, National Integration Council, Interstate Council, National Water Resources Council. The Prime Minister is the head of disaster management team during emergency at political level. He is the political head of all the forces, that is Air Force, Navy and the Army. So, in short, what we can explain and analyze is that the Prime Minister is in the real sense the de facto head of the government. So, what we stated just now can be summarized in following words: that the formation of the Council of Ministers, the Prime Minister determines the strength of his ministry and selects his team of ministers. However, this number cannot be more than 15% of the total membership of the Lok Sabha. The Prime Minister is responsible for the allocation and change of portfolios. The Prime Minister is the leader of the cabinet and presides over its meetings. The Prime Minister can demand resignation from any minister at any time, and the latter has to accept the wishes of the former. However, if any minister may fail to resign, the Prime Minister can get him dismissed from the President. The Prime Minister is the main channel of communication between the President and the Cabinet. The Prime Minister has the power to advise the President in favor of a dissolution of the Lok Sabha. Prime Minister always plays a key role in determining Indian foreign policy and relations with other countries. Prime Minister is also the leader of the nation. All high-ranking appointments and promotions are made by the President with the advice of the Prime Minister. The emergency powers of the President are in reality the powers of the Prime Minister. So these are in general the most important functions of the Prime Minister of India. Now, after discussing the most important parts, functions, the way the Prime Minister, the Council of Ministers is being selected, we have one very important thing to be discussed, and that is the relation between the President, Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. As stated in Article 74, there shall be a Council of Ministers with the Prime Minister to aid and advise the President. There exists a very special relation between the President, Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. Talking about Article 78 of the Indian Constitution, the Prime Minister communicates all decisions made by the Council of Ministers to the President. President can also refer issues for the consideration of the Council of Ministers. It was held by the Supreme Court in UN Rao versus Indira Gandhi 1971 that any exercise of powers by the President without the advice of the Council of Ministers shall be unconstitutional as being violative of Article 74 Clause 1. Afterwards, the 44th Amendment allows to the President an opportunity to advise and caution the Council of Ministers and seeks reconsideration of any matter before the President puts his seal of approval and accepts the proposed course of action. The Prime Minister is the one who reports all the works done by the Cabinet Ministers to the President of India. He is the one who briefs the President of India about any state of emergency or any matter of foreign policy or urgent importance. He is the one responsible for informing the functioning of the government and the Union of India to the President. So, after discussing all about the Prime Minister of India, his election, tenure, eligibility, powers, functions, very essential the relation between the President, Council of Ministers and the Prime Minister, we can finally come to the conclusion that the Prime Minister exercises real and formidable powers in all spheres of governmental activity, be it executive, legislative or financial. The Prime Minister is the captain of the ship of the state. He is also said to be the keystone of Cabinet Arc, also stated as the steering wheel of government and the moon amongst lesser stars. And there's no doubt in stating that all these things are not false when we talk about the power position of the Prime Minister of India.